Welcome to Horror Movies and Beyond. I'm your host, Ivotres Littles. I'm joined by the director of the supernatural horror movie It Feeds. Let's welcome Chad Archibald. Welcome.
Awesome. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me to talk about your film because, man, I was bawling my eyes out towards the end and just thinking about it, it's like my eyes start watering up. It is a really great film, well written, great story, great characters. I mean, the symbolism in this movie just stood out. I mean, it really focuses on grief, fear, and so many other things that we're going to get into. So but before we talk about it, we
Yeah.
need to know what it's about.
Yeah, it's basically about a therapist and her daughter. And this therapist has the ability to go into people's minds and deal with their trauma from the inside. So one day, when a young girl shows up at their house claiming that there's an entity feeding on her, uh, Cynthia, our mother, has to decide if she wants to help or if she wants to protect herself and her family. Ultimately, she tries not to help, but her daughter rebels and things go horribly wrong. And it's full of fun. It's full of laughs, full of scares,
Mhm.
good cheer moments in it. But it's a fun ride for sure.
There was something that you said in your director's notes that I wanted to jump straight in. And part of it, you said this movie is filled with things that terrify you the most. And can you elaborate on that part? And through your experiences, is that what you put into the film? Because I felt like this was more of a personal feeling than just a story that you made up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I wrote this movie. Uh, the last film that I directed was a movie called I'll Think You're Dead. I did it in 2018. It came out. So through the pandemic and everything, I had struggled a fair bit to kind of figure out what I wanted to write next and what I wanted to do next. And during that time, I had lost both my parents to cancer, and I lived with them through, their downfall and until the end, both times. And I think I was struggling a little bit on what, you know, trying to write something that I actually cared about. And I think when I was younger, it's like you just write a fun movie that you want to make. But I think, as I got older and kind of as I went through that, I was struggling with the fact that I couldn't find something that I was passionate about, and that meant something to me and that, really drove me. And I struggled a lot with, losing them. Um, so one day when I was kind of trying to figure something out, it just kind of clicked in my head. I had this dream, and I, have a dream log thing that I keep on my phone. So anytime I have dreams in the middle of the night, I wake up and I just jot them down. And half the times I don't even remember writing them. Uh, but I had this dream about this young girl kind of coming into the house and saying, there's this thing in the room with her, and it's feeding on her. And it was just a random thing that I never really thought about. And years later, it's like I revisited the idea, and I was kind of like, do I want to do a movie with like an entity? It's like I always, I love movies like Insidious and The Conjuring and The Ring. But I was like, is there something like, do I want to do an entity, and like, what's it from? Is it a book? Is it an artifact? Is it a religious thing? Like, there's just everything's been done to death. So I've always kind of stayed away from that, just because it's like you want to do something that feels a little different or that means something to you. So, I mean, I think one day it kind of clicked in my head, and I was like, well, what if I created like a demonic version of cancer? And I created this entity that just feeds on people, and it acts just like cancer, and its motives are just like cancer, and it's got one focus, and that's all it does. And then I started getting really excited about this because now, I had a villain that's a villain in my real life. And, now I could create some awesome characters that would go kick its butt. I've loved movies like The Cell and Nightmare on Elm Street I grew up with. And it's like, I've always wanted to do a movie where you kind of like bend reality. And this just seems so perfect that, creating a character that could go into someone's mind and kind of defeat this demonic version of cancer.
Mm.
And that got me really excited. And I ended up writing the first draft of the movie in 7 days. Drawing on a bunch of inspirations that I've had all my life, that I've always loved
Mm.
and been excited to kind of create or explore as a filmmaker. And all these pieces started fitting together so nicely, and I just I got really excited and pounded out this script, and then started showing some people, and reworked it with a ton of notes over time, like any script. But then the first people that we showed it to financed it, with the biggest budget that we've had to date, and boom, we were shooting. So it all came together quick at that point.
Based on what you said about your parents, I feel like Jordan was you during that time, based on what you said.
Yeah, like, I mean, it definitely was, and I mean, it's part of the reason why Jordan's a female, is like I didn't want to write myself into this or write anything
Hmm.
that just started feeling too like I was, I still wanted different. I still wanted to kind of create a character that was its own entity. So, but definitely, I mean, the idea of what she's going through and her past trauma and losing her parent, her father, it definitely, I wrote that from the heart of, when I sit and close my eyes, I think I still feel haunted at the time that I spent in the hospital with my mom. Like, I can still see her there, and I can still feel it, and I can still picture it. And, it was a really horrible experience, kind of seeing her downfall and all the struggles that she went through, and how bad it got. And it was something that, you know, I felt very passionate about staying with her every moment. Like, when she went into the hospital, I never left again. I showered at the hospital. I ate at the hospital. I never left her until she passed away, which was about a month and a half. So it's like watching it all happen and being by her side the entire time.
Mm.
It felt important to me, but I still look back and think, man, I feel like I witnessed some things, and some of it so burnt into my brain that I wonder if I did more damage to myself by
Hmm.
doing that than, trying to stay away and remembering her how she always was.
Mm.
So with Jordan and being able to go into Jordan's mind and seeing that, it's like I really kind of drew off the idea of, like, if you went into my mind and saw the things that I think
Hmm.
haunt me the most, it's like you'd be in that hospital room with her. And that's also why, when there's little elements of those that are kind of dropped throughout the movie, like when Cynthia goes into Randall's mind and we're in that hospital room.
Hmm.
um, it felt very personal for me, because that was a scenario in the hospital room. I remember looking and seeing my dad looking through the doorway window because he was too upset to come inside and see my mom.
Hmm.
So Randall's standing outside. So there's all these little moments that I wrote into the script. It was therapy for me. Like, as I was writing through this, I was like feeling like I was getting things out, and I was exploring
Hmm.
a lot of feelings that I had, and kind of just at least trying to get them out of my mind and onto paper. And
Hmm.
um, so much of it was for me. It's like, even the idea of this creature being a demonic version of cancer was like, it was for me. It's never like, it's not that I want someone to watch this movie and be like, oh, I totally get it. It's a demonic. It's not even meant to be that for everyone else. But for me, this was my therapy that I went through to kind of get there.
It almost makes me feel like Riley was who you were at the time, and Jordan is who you became. I feel like the moments in this film where she's touching people, where Riley is touching people for them to feed, it's like, this is the feelings I have. And it feels like, not only in the film, it's, the demon is popping out and, feeding off these people, but it's like that energy that is resonating through you to other people of how you felt during that time. And that's kind of what I'm feeling by listening to you, and then remembering how the movie was. And Jordan is that strength, like, she's, rebellious, and I gotta fight this. And it's like you went through what, from Riley to Jordan.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much stuff in this movie that I don't even realize was so personal to me. I think, during the process of writing it, I was super emotional. I was very excited about writing it, but I was also, I was sitting downstairs at 3 a.m., in tears writing stuff, and it's like something that isn't sad in the movie per se, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like, for me, I was like, I think I was finally being able to kind of face a lot of things that I had gone through and stuff. So I mean, I think there's a little bit in every one of the characters that is probably parts of me dealing with my stuff that I went through. You know.
I really want the audience to know the importance of the how this movie starts off, because I the way it starts, it's like it's a build from at a point where it's the breaking point for all the characters. So that's how I perceived it, because it's already, we see Cynthia already in a moment of helping Larry. The intensity of, hey, we got to help Riley that came in. What we're going to do now, you're a coward. So, but I think those feelings were already there, and then I just gave the film like a steady pace. Like, it was like, let's go. It wasn't a build up and then we go. It's like, we're there,
We're
let's
there.
start from there. And that's what I really liked about it, because it was like, okay, let's get to the point, because
We're
I'm
in it.
let's get there, and we're there.
Yeah.
And one other important element, the boy, I saw the book or whatever in Larry's mind, the boy who cried wolf. And that is so important throughout the film, because kids always say things, and something has happened, or anyone have said anything, and no one believes them, no one wants to get involved.
And I mean, it's like, and it goes even deeper than that in the fact that I think people lie to themselves, you know, like I think even Larry, was lying to himself in the fact that he had never told anyone, or maybe even never had his memory of what had happened to him as a young child. And it took Cynthia going in and kind of finding this repressed memory for it to kind of come to the forefront,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people do that. And I think there's also, and I've definitely had this in my mind as well. And I mean, everyone lives their own journey, so it's hard to tell, what people think in there, in the middle of the night. But it's like, I've thought before in my head being like, man, I don't want to think about something, because like, what if one day I think about something or remember a memory and go, oh my God, something horrible happened to me when I was young that I've like been ignoring all my life. And now that I've realized it, now it's real.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think, as you were saying, it's like, it goes even deeper in the fact that I think Larry had, struggled through so much and didn't allow himself to even remember that this had happened to him. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And ironically, the mom, which is Cynthia, who has this ability to go into the mind and discover repressed memories and thoughts, she's a psychiatrist as well. But and she knows the power of what she can do. That's not the point of the story. It's Jordan. What's in her mind, the mom really fears, because she did not touch her. And then you see why. It's like, oh well, I I don't think I would be ready either.
Yeah.
Um, but to get
Yeah.
into that, oh, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, I was going to say absolutely, and I think just something that you had touched on earlier that I wanted to mention as well is just with all this past trauma and the things that and the events that had happened to Jordan and Cynthia before all this. I've had a lot of people ask me about prequels for either for Randall's character and for Cynthia and Jordan's character, because really there's a full movie of what happened to them before and their father and all that. It's like, that's an entire film on its own. And also Randall, when we were on set, me and Sean talked about it a fair bit of the fact that it's like his movie is in its third act when we meet him. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's if you were watching his movie, it's like you'd be in the third act whenever he storms in and gets Riley. So
Mm-hmm.
much has happened to him already. So I think how you mentioned, when the movie starts, we're just like, you kick right in. It's like, yeah, like I think all of our characters have full movies in front of this, and we're kind of coming in at a very hot point in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the dialogue is so important to that, because although we're in the middle of each one of their stories of where it's like, okay, this is really at its point, it still explains Randall. It still explains even Agatha. Like, I mean, she's kind of subtle, but she's at her point where she's lonely. Like,
Yeah.
we know she's lonely and she doesn't have many friends and things like that, and just want to feel important. So we get that throughout, and which I absolutely just loved, because it was like, okay, no character was not important or just a filler. Like, someone was important. Even the poor lady that was tied in the basement of Randall's house was important, because she was on her last,
Yeah.
because of what they were doing to her. So, and then she said, we got to her end and she was like, just kill me. Like, I'm done,
Yeah.
and it's like, that's just, geez, everybody's in shambles in this movie.
No one's
Um,
doing great. No one's doing great.
no one. I wanted to talk about Cynthia's ability. We're at a point where she has mastered her gift. So when we're seeing her in the mind of Larry, a person that's coming to see her, um, you see her walking through this old gym or school, and it was just terrifying. That whole scene was like these kids sitting up there. You have this guy, bald guy, his back is turned, and you have the young Larry in the cage, and she's telling him that you could get out. What is something that it was so important that I'm so glad that you put in there is that her mind, even though she has the ability to go in other people's minds, her mind believe it's real, so she could get hurt. So it has like the Nightmare on Elm Street feel,
Hmm.
especially when she get cut in her arm. But that means she could probably be killed in there. Like, something could kill her
Yeah.
in those mind, where everybody else is like, it's just in their mind. Like, that is scary, and we get a taste of that when she gets hurt, and then when she wakes up, it's still there. I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty incredible that you put
Yeah.
that in there.
And also just being able to kind of, it's her taking the risk when she's going in to help these people. And I mean, I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
very admirable thing for her too, is that anytime she does do this, it's like, she's risking her life to help someone. And it could be, someone who went through a light trauma or a heavy, horrible trauma, and she never really knows what she gets into. And I think that's also why that dynamic of Jordan always having to assess people first and kind of, discuss with people, like, why they're there, and basically get a little bit of a layout of, what the risks would be for Cynthia to kind of go into their mind and deal with it. And I think there's a lot of therapists as well. It's like, when you I think there's a lot of therapists that go and take on so much energy, I think, from people when they're talking to them. Like, it's a
Mm-hmm.
hard job, and if you're great at it, that empathy that you have, hearing about people's trauma and what they've gone through, it's like, it would be very hard not to leave with some damage of your own. So kind of, I just wanted like a little bit of a physical representation of that.
Jordan's mother, when she was able to see that demon, I think what was going on inside her that was manifesting itself was starting to seep out. And she was starting to become vulnerable, because she was holding in things and also going into people and seeing their minds. And it was just, I think it was kind of like taking on, its own entity inside her. So I think her abilities start to become a reality, not just in someone's mind. And I think it was slowly taking on, especially what happened to her husband, and that
Mm-hmm.
denial. And that,
Yeah.
that was kind of what I was starting to feel when I saw that, when she walked in. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And I
didn't
think
even
it was
see
a
that.
few things. I think it's an entity that's so strong that it's manifesting, but also, like you said, there's a line that she says to her daughter, to Jordan upstairs, when they're talking about her father, and saying that, he wanted to help people so much, but he took on so much pain and suffering, and he took on too much, and it started
Hmm.
to, manifest inside himself, and it was his ultimate downfall.
Hmm.
Is that, he wanted to help so much, and he wanted to just, and he was a bit of a sponge. And I think, taking on so many people's suffering and so many people's trauma,
Hmm.
it weighs on yourself. And unfortunately, it
Yeah.
eventually ended horribly.
Yeah. Yeah. the attention to detail in this film is so important, especially with Cynthia's clothing when she enters in the mines. That's number one. And two, the house. That house, it changes. And it's very subtle, but it's also very important because you start seeing, the first time she goes, sees, touches Jordan finally to see what's going on in her head, because Jordan and her stubborn self was like, I'm going to help Riley do what teenagers do. And that's when we meet Agatha, who you could tell she's just a lonely woman. She just want to help and be involved in any capacity. And then from there, Jordan goes to Randall, and you just trying to help Riley. I mean, it was just very creepy. It was so intense in that in that basement there. But what was something about that was the house, like not just
Mm-hmm.
Randall's house, but the mind when she see the house. So you see it about three times. I think it's three, where
Yeah.
one's in her head. The other time it was these vines, these like feelers, like being consumed and overtaken. And then the third time it was like, we need to go in the house and we need to figure this out. We're going to do this.
Yeah, and really, it's like on the first thing, the wardrobe. It was yeah, it was definitely the first boards that I did for our team were wardrobe. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something that I really wanted to emphasize with this, is that whenever she goes into someone's mind, it's like her wardrobe reflects kind of the environment and what her presence means in the mind as well. So I think whenever she goes into Larry's mind, it's like she's kind of has this kind of regal, and it was like gold and blue, which is the school colors
Mm-hmm.
that she was in, right? So uh, everything in that world, you know, was supposed to kind of resemble like what the school was in Larry's mind, but also, what it's kind of become. So the idea is almost like, it's the whatever Elmsboro Wolves or whatever. So it's like their mascot is a wolf, and the coach of their school team is the person who's been doing these horrible things. And
Mm-hmm.
even when you go into his office, it's like now he's got this big wolf head, and he's got this wolf skin carpet, and it's like this whole thing is turned into like the wolf. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Cynthia, I think, just being this kind of regal, clean, beautiful presence that has kind of like walked in to the world. But as we go through the movie and she keeps going into people's minds, she goes into Jordan's mind, and she's wearing this kind of red dress, and it's actually a scene that got cut out of the movie, but there was a moment with Jordan and Cynthia where there was a picture, and Cynthia says it's like that dress was a dress that her husband had bought her, and he never buys her wardrobe or anything, and it was god ugly, and she thought it was just the ugliest thing ever, but because he loved it so much, she loved it, and she wore it only for the fact that it would make him happy, and that he liked it, and even though that she didn't like it. And I think that's a dress that she had probably put in the closet and hasn't touched for a long time, but in Jordan's mind, she's still wearing that dress because it's a special memory that she has of the two of them. Going into Randall's mind, we had this outfit that was amazing. Our wardrobe person, she designed it, top to bottom, was sewed the entire thing. It was based off a bunch of designs that I had kind of like found online and put together. And it's such a shame because you don't really get to see much of it, but it's this elegant kind of like white suit um, dress kind of thing that she is supposed to be kind of like this clean, innocent presence in this kind of filthy mind that he has. And it's like as she's going through, it's like the bottom of it's getting dirty and dirtier, and it's kind of like coming up as she's going deeper and deeper into like his mind, and him digging holes and burying bodies. And it's such a shame because going through all of it, and being in production and shooting so quick and lighting and whatever, it's like there's never really wide shots where you get to see the whole thing from the front, and it was so awesome, and it's such a shame. But even right down to the final moments in the creature's mind,
Mm-hmm.
Cynthia in her like badass gothic
Mm-hmm.
outfit there, which I absolutely loved, and again was entirely custom. Um, it was such an important part of the whole film. And yeah, and then as far as the locations and stuff, that house that was in Jordan's mind is actually just facade. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, there's nothing inside it. It's just 2x4s inside. So we had
Mm-hmm.
found it on a back lot that they shoot a TV show called Reacher on. And I just loved it because it was like this house in the middle of nowhere. And then we brought in the picket fence and all that. But I was just like, where else can you find a house that looks like this? It's so surreal and so like, just feels like you're in someone's mind, And I think the idea is that that house was probably on a street, but in Jordan's mind, it's like none of the other houses matter. It's all this
Mm-hmm.
house, with the idea that it's almost like the end of the movie. It's in this cave thing that's red, and really I designed it to be like a tumor, and these
Mm-hmm.
vines are actually supposed to be like the veins of a tumor.
Mm-hmm.
So as it's kind of building in Jordan's mind, it's taking over this house and these vines or these veins.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you go in, it's like they're further and further, and they're like kind of like dug deeper and deeper into Jordan's mind, and that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
what those are all supposed to really represent.
I really do love the ability that Cynthia has because it's so focused. Like it's like she goes through the blueprint of the mind. She starts one spot, figure it out, and then move to the next by her saying, it's like she's saying something. It's not like, oh, I'm not sure I could do this. Oh my God, it's so scary. I fear to go in your mind. No, she's like, two fingers to the head and go. Like
Yeah,
she already knows. And I am so tired of horror movies where the person have these abilities and so afraid. It's like, you've been doing this for 20 years. Why are you afraid to help this one person out? And you don't get that from Cynthia. The only person that she fears, it's not like she fears in her ability, is what she may see from
yeah,
her own daughter, because it's like her daughter.
yeah.
you know.
And
But
she knew
other
what
than
her
that,
daughter had gone through. It's like,
yeah.
I think the idea is that Jordan, when she was young, how we keep seeing her in her dreams
Mm-hmm.
as this young girl, she probably came home and couldn't find her dad and went up into the attic and found him.
Mm-hmm.
And, Cynthia wasn't there for that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think Cynthia knows that if she goes into her mind, she's going to have to live through that again.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I think you're right. Like, I really wanted it to be one of those things where it's like Cynthia knows what she's doing. She can do it. She's obviously just very cautious when she does it. But when your child's in danger, fuck all that. It's like you're now like, it doesn't matter. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried about me anymore. I have to stop this thing. It's like something's attacking my child. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point, it's like, well, now you see someone who's very good at her abilities, and she's going up against something very, very dangerous to her. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
And,
it's
and
exciting.
at and at one point, she she said her, Jordan was like, it's inside me now, and she was like, I would sense that. But I think this is my theory. I think she couldn't sense it. One, she didn't want to.
Yeah, exactly.
Two, Jordan had the ability as well, but was not sure how to use it until she was kind of forced to, like, hey, I got to do this, to save her own mind and her
Yeah.
at some point. But I think it was a block, like, like the writer's block. I
Yeah.
can't figure it out.
She has so many walls up when it comes to Jordan to protect
Hmm.
herself, that it's like, when this thing's there, she's like, I would have sensed it. When really it's like, she hasn't even really tried. Like, she's
No.
not she's afraid of
Yeah.
going anywhere near Jordan's mind.
Hmm.
Um,
Um, oh, go ahead. Was
no,
there?
that's
Okay.
it.
There's three scenes that are my favorite. That are
Okay, let's
absolutely
hear
my
them.
favorite scenes. The one where uh, when Cynthia talks to Agatha about Jordan, it was like, what did she tell you? What happened? Where you at? I'm gone. It wasn't like, just call me if you hear something. And she's like sitting there waiting. No,
Yeah.
she was like, I'm out of there. That I was like, yes, yes, yes. I'm tired of those same old scenes where they just sit around. It's like, no, she went fast. The second one, which I just thought was like, oh my God, it was like tenfold of what was really going on in this movie, is when finally, Randall didn't kidnap Jordan. He's at the police station. She begging. She was like, I don't care about your protocols, detective. This is my daughter. The part where he was like, when they realized how, they found, another a killer who was doing terrible things, and the detective came back to her and said, "Look, you got a few minutes." So she walked in. She didn't grab a seat. She didn't say ask a bunch of questions. She
Yeah.
asked one, "Where is she?" And Randall's sitting there
You
in
got one
handcuffs,
chance.
like, well, she's like, "Forget this." She grabbed the back of his head and just touched, like, in anger, like,
Yeah.
"I'm going to figure this out." And he's like, "No, no." And that is what I was like, yes, because why sit and wait, and you have this ability to, why ask all these questions? She went straight for the head. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I
And her
watched that
whole
series.
character's like that, is like,
Yeah.
I am not waiting for anyone, and I can't trust anyone else either. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, there's a huge concept of the fact that it's like her and her daughter in their own house, and everyone else is against them because nobody will believe who they are, and
Mm-hmm.
she's seen a whole town turn on them before. And I think for her, she's like, it's just me and my daughter, and no one else can help us. The police can't help us. No one else can help us. It's just me and my
Mm-hmm.
daughter. So, um, even when the cops are like, you can go home now, we're going to do whatever. She's like, I'm not going home. Like, my daughter's out there. I'm going,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going out on the streets. I'm doing, whatever I can. It's like, she takes things into her own hands. And I love that about
Mm-hmm.
it.
And it was so good. Like, even when she found the information, she didn't sit there and explain. She was like, "I'm gone." And here comes Agatha, let me help you. And she just went and got in the car and said, "It's just going this way." Like, there was no hesitation, there was nothing. It was like, we already know the stakes are high, we already know she has the ability, let's just go, like, get there, because the daughter's getting all messed up when he buried her in the ground, like, she's getting tore up, let's get to it. And then that's why I was like, okay, we're moving, when I'm watching this. And the third one was when Cynthia touches the demon, when she gets into the mind of her daughters, like, finally, I got to do it. She gets in there, and then she lets the demon take her. And then finally, she was like, you saw her hand go up and touch. And it was like, oh, we're going to see what's in there. And it was like, that's probably the scariest thing ever, because now you're in the mind of
In the
your
mind of a
daughter,
demon.
and it's touching you, and then she's in there. But then the kicker is, the daughter shows up, okay, and thought, okay, I'm going to break this, and break it, and nothing happens. And I think it was just the point where Cynthia was just letting it take her and not her daughter, because you see her, strapped down with these vines, holding tentacles or whatever, holding her, and it was like, she giving up. She could have did something, but she was like, no, take me and leave my daughter alone. But and then it's like her daughter shows up in the gear, different gear, and makeup and whatever. It's like, oh, and then it reveals she's touching the demon. She could have touched the mom and went that route and just save her mom, but she was like, no, I'm going to get this too. Like, no, I'm going in the mind. So I just thought that was such a heightened moment. I mean, from her touching Randall, getting in the car, get to the place, dig. Agatha, you go over there and tell him to get away. I'm touching my daughter, and then the daughter touching the demon is like, woo, 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 where else can this go? And it was a good
Mind inside her
pace.
mind.
Yeah, it was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And that,
And that moment was awesome in the
yeah, it
theaters. Like,
looked.
we played at a bunch of festivals now, and we like have done a ton of sold out, like, 400, 500 person theaters. And that moment when Jordan shows up is like so fun to watch an audience, because everyone like stands and cheers, everyone's throwing fists, everyone's like, it's awesome. It's so much fun to watch.
I mean, you wrote this with such heart, and you could definitely see it. The entire time I was watching this, I was like, this is not a made up story. Someone or something experienced something, and they're getting it out on film, and I was right. And so, but that ending, um, ooh, don't. Okay, hold on. when when finally they had to face, they had to walk through that house together, because obviously Jordan saw what she didn't see, And so she had to see it through her daughter. And that was the biggest fear. I was a kid, I was like 7 when my dad died. So as an adult going through the motions now, it's like I'm stronger to face it than I did as a child. And so that scene just broke me because, and then letting him down, to lay him down and just grieve for that moment, and her mom watching what she's seen, that for the first time, it feels like for the first time, and just allowing her daughter to grieve and not run over there and be with her, but just to let those feelings, was just so powerful. And just, it was such a powerful scene. And I'm wondering for you, how how does that relate to what happened to you, like in your situation? Was there a moment where you felt like, was someone there were allowing you to grieve, or was that something you put on paper, on film, for that moment to represent, this is the moment where I am allowed to grieve?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. Like, I think so much of that moment was just like Larry, where Cynthia says, "Is like, I can't let you out of the cage. You have to do it yourself." Is
Hmm.
that moment with Jordan, where Jordan's like, Cynthia can't go and help her take her father down. It's like she needs to do this on her own, and she needs to face it on her own. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think so much of that ending and why it was important to have an ending like that for me was same thing. It's just like, I love the idea of being able to get past trauma. I think even writing the script was a big, moment for me, getting through a bunch of it. Um, I really, before the script and after the script, I feel like I've been a different person. Um, and, you know, it does kind of in a weird way reflect, how, I feel or would hope that I would feel, or however it, came out. But, you know, getting through trauma and facing it and being able to kind of like come out on the other side, is important. And I mean, I think with the script as well, the story of what they went through and the trauma and losing a parent, and trying to deal with that trauma is so personal to me. Um, I wanted to make sure that, that wasn't something that was looked over. It's like there are so many movies where, you know, we put in the start of the film where you see that, both of them are struggling with the fact that they have not faced, um, their own trauma, and they're trying to help other people, but it's an issue in their house every day. So I wanted to make sure the ending, didn't leave our characters hanging. It's like I wanted to make sure that, they finally use their ability on themselves and face their trauma. And I mean, anytime I read a horror film, it's like I always want to say you should be able to take out all the horror elements of this movie and still have a compelling story. And I really wanted to make sure that we had that with Jordan and Cynthia. So much of it was, closure for me getting through this whole thing, and I wanted, this moment of levity at the end that was sweet and heartfelt, and you finally see these characters that you care about, and it's not about the creature or any of that anymore. Now it's about them and them finally dealing with their own stuff. So I mean, that was very important for me. And then whenever we come back out into the real world, they still have their scars, and I
Hmm.
I think there's something sweet to say there of like, it doesn't matter how many scars you have on the outside that won't heal, you can still heal yourself on the inside.
Which I almost forgot to mention, the actors. Ashley Green, I just love her look. She has such big eyes. Like, she's very
Yeah,
expressive in
and
her face of her feelings and
yeah,
emotions, and
and she came
even,
to she came to play. I mean, like we
yeah.
cast her very quickly before the movie,
Hmm.
and I mean, I think she showed up the day before we started shooting. And every day we worked so hard on character and every
Hmm.
line and going through it, and she brought so much to the table, and just really, for probably one of the smallest movies that she's been on, like she just was so into it and worked so hard on this movie, and I think it really translates.
Ellie O'Brien, who
Yeah,
played Jordan, yeah, she was great. Like,
yeah,
you really saw like her strength, and how she developed that character, that rebellious teen. And Sean Ashmore, he was frightening. Like,
yeah,
he was scary. Like, it's like, ooh. But I could understand him as Randall was trying, for his daughter, but man, he was
Yeah.
kind of creepy.
And his
And
character was always meant to be like someone who's not scary because he's big and hulking and scary looking. It's like he's supposed to just be a normal dad that
yeah.
is scary because of how desperate he's become to save his
Hmm.
daughter. And if you really look at the things that he was doing, so much of them were either to save his daughter or to save other people. And
Hmm.
it's, it's in a weird way that if you had a movie from his perspective, I bet you'd go through it and be like, this guy is really trying to stop this thing and save people's lives,
Hmm.
or, by the end of it. Um,
Hmm.
but, that's obviously he's taken it into extreme measures because he's been through so much and he's failed so many times trying to stop this thing.
Is it Julian Richings?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, him. If you see him in the movie, you know it's not going to end well.
Yeah. Julian's
Uh,
amazing. He's amazing in
yeah,
everything.
him and
He's
Vicious
so
Fun, that
awesome.
was hilarious. Like
Yeah.
he was so good as a serial killer. You like what? Like, but then in him and oh my god, anything for Jackson. I mean,
Yeah.
he just played this character that's just so mysterious. And even in here, when I first saw him, I was like, "What he about to do?" I mean, you had such a great cast overall. It was so great. And this movie now is on VOD and is in theaters, right? Selected theaters or
It's like theater still right
okay.
now till the end of May, and it's also on VOD in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Coming soon in Canada. Comes out in the UK and Ireland May 12th.
You have to check this film out. It's so character driven and well written, and the pace is great. I always have a problem with movies that are more than an hour and 30 minutes because I'm like, especially horror movies, like you
Yeah.
don't need all that. But when you're watching this, you don't even notice. Like it's an hour and like 43.
Yeah.
So you really don't. And it's nothing in there wasteful. Like it doesn't feel like you could take that out. No, it's pretty tight of what it is. So please check it out. Thank you so much, Chad. This was a great conversation. I didn't cry. Yes, usually
I saw
I'm.
you hold it back. You
Yeah, I
stayed
know it was
strong.
hard. Oh man, but
No. And thank
it's
you.
so
Thanks so
good.
much for doing
You did
this.
such a great job, and I think it was better than a lot of other films, especially the Conjuring and the Insidious universe. It was because it was the well written and the character's power. Like her ability was just to the point. I loved it. I
Thank you.
could definitely see this as I would want to see this as a universe. I feel like we could see it feeds 2, 3, 4. And I'm rarely like that, but the way it was it was better than some films out there. Let me tell you.
I've been asked a lot about it, so we'll see.
So, but leave a comment below, like and share, please.
Thank you so
Feed the
much.
spoon. It feeds. Yes. Thank you. Bye, everybody.